Jose Armando Reséndez has every reason to be in a celebratory mode, because after his fight with Caleb Plant, where he was able to obtain a split decision victory, which should have been unanimous, he has set himself in a place for lucrative future outings. His performance was one for the records and could be a contender for upset of the year. Let's talk about Reséndez, his victory, and how things played out when he faced Caleb Plant. On Saturday, we saw Caleb Plant return to the ring as he headed up a PBC doubleheader on Amazon Prime. Caleb Plant in the main event was facing Armando Reséndez, and Jermall Charlo in the co-main was taking on Thomas LaManna. This was an opportunity for Plant to help set up the stage to possibly face Charlo later in the year. Both men hadn't fought in a while, but it's a matchup that has two of PBC's top fighters at the 168-pound weight division facing off. Now, what's interesting is Armando Reséndez getting the opportunity against Plant is relatively unknown to the casual boxer observer. Coming out of Mexico, the 26-year-old Orthodox fighter is 5'10" with a 69-inch reach, and he is noted for a couple of fights on his record, which happened to be a fight against Jarrett Hurd in March of 2023, where he stopped Hurd in a late round where Hurd incurred a serious cut on his mouth and the doctors just waved this fight off. Hurd couldn't continue, but he was losing the fight anyway. So Reséndez then followed that up with a big fight where he faced Elijah Garcia in September of the same year, and he suffered a TKO stoppage. Now, Garcia stopped him in the 8th round, and the judges had the fight within a couple of points. So it was kind of a close battle, but Garcia prevailed. In this fight, Caleb Plant opened up with his usual boxing sweet hands label, noting that he would dance around the ring, pump his jab, offset a couple of combinations. And as Resendiz followed in hot pursuit, he found himself dropping the first couple of rounds to Plant. But something interesting happened in the 3rd round. Plant took a couple of body shots that seemingly did something to him, and the fight, as I had noted, began to change. What was the change? Because Resendiz had begun to close the gap against Caleb Plant and be able to get close enough to him to get his own punches off. Caleb seemed to fatigue roughly around round 5 or 6. The energy wasn't the same that he opened the fight with. But a lot of that had to do with Resendiz's pressuring and the body punches that he was putting in against Caleb. This was something that, even though these men are familiar with one another and have worked together in the gym sparring, it made a difference in the fight. Caleb dropping the decision in this fight, which one judge actually had him winning, which I thought was absurd because this should have been a unanimous instead of a split decision for Resendiz. But Plant's record now drops to 23-3 with 14 KOs. He had never been noted as a big puncher, but his nickname of Sweet Hands has always been his moniker. He can punch with combinations, and he looks rather sweet when he's offensively inclined, and he makes his opponents miss and he counters smoothly. Thus the nickname. But Resendiz wasn't feeling that. He pursued, and he pursued well, to the degree that with this outcome, his record now increases to 16-2 with 11 KOs. Now, when you think about it, fighters who come in that aren't necessarily well known by the public, it seems like a shock when they're able to come out on top, as Resendiz was able to do in this fight. But as the rounds wore on, he began to increase his punch output. Early on, he was cutting the ring off, closing the gap, and looking to just close the distance with Caleb, but without a lot of offensive onset to go with his movement. In the second half of the fight, he began to really open up against Caleb, and that's where Caleb found himself in trouble, to the degree that he began to hold, bend over. There was a couple of body shots that actually bent Caleb over. I was surprised by that. He looked like he was in great shape. However, Resendiz's pressure, body punching, particularly there was a right hand beneath Caleb's left elbow guard that he was landing that had the former champions' total sides all discolored with bruising. Caleb only won about 3 rounds on my scorecard. The first, the second, and the 11th. And I think it was the 11th where Resendiz decided to kind of let loose a little bit and give Caleb an opportunity to catch his breath, because he seemed to save his offensive output for the 12th round to finish up strong. And strongly did he finish. Caleb went on to say in the aftermath that he felt that he won the fight. I guess pride is something with fighters like Plant. But he said he was dealing with a problematic right hand. He said that it was hurting him a little bit. It was kind of bruised, but that's not an excuse. What do? I was putting my jab on him, using the whole ring, switching directions, using feints. I didn't use my right hand as much as I wanted. It was bothering me. If it's not an excuse, why bother to mention it? Because if you think back into the beginning of this promotion, Caleb was talking about how Resendiz wasn't in his league. He was going to really smash him and show the difference between their class. Well, I think Caleb forgot the memo that Resendiz was a quick study and an A+ student, because the way he attacked, the way he came after Plant, closed the gap, outfought him on the inside and outfought him from mid-range, where distance wasn't an option for Plant as the fight wore on. Plant was looking the worse for wear. His face was badly bruised, just as his body. And Resendiz was giving a great strong account reminiscent of his performance against Jarrett Hurd. Hurd started out similarly to Plant against Resendiz. He was boxing and everything until Resendiz began to get close and was letting his hands go, throwing combinations and punches in sessions that followed in great places. He was landing great uppercuts on the inside to Plant and following up with hooks to the body and hooks to the head, sometimes doubling shots up, sometimes throwing shots in series of 3 to 4, maybe 5 punch combinations. Plant was being outfought and he was being outthought in these situations. And the inevitable happened. We go to the scorecards and the judges saw it in favor of Resendiz. The only thing was, there was one judge in particular that did not score the fight properly, and that happened to be referee David Sutherland. He scored it 115 to 113 for Plant. There was no way. The other two judges, Steve Whitefield and Max DeLuca, had it 116 to 112 for Resendiz. More like it. But like I said, I had it 9 rounds to 3 for Resendiz, with maybe one round that was kind of a round that could be flipped. But a great performance by Resendiz, all in all. And his trainer, Manny Robles, should be proud, because he has brought this young man along, and he has had a couple of setbacks, bumps in the road, so to speak, along his journey. But now he has beaten a top fighter in the division, and no one can take that away from him. Plant has indicated that there is an opportunity for a rematch, and maybe they should have one, because if the rematch takes place and Resendiz is able to repeat victory, then it's going to really cement his position in the top division of the sport, where he can get that elusive title shot. And I would look forward to that. But what do you think? This is Stormy B Man. Shout out to the mighty LDBC and Liberated Perspective, a third eye view of the world. For more content such as this, please like, comment, subscribe, and share. Let me know what your thoughts are about the performance that Resendiz put on in this fight. And should Armando fight Caleb straight away in a rematch, or should he look for greater dragons to slay? Leave comments and let's discuss further. Peace to everyone out there, and everyone please remain safe.